6 months after Operation Righteous Fury, the galaxy operated under new rules that no one had imagined possible. The Galactic Council Chambers, once a symbol of ancient dominance where elder species dictated terms to younger civilizations, now included permanent human representatives whose voices carried weight that could not be ignored. Admiral Lisa Kane, now bearing the formal title of Human Ambassador General, stood at the observation deck of the council station, looking out at a view that had changed dramatically. Where once only the ships of established council species had docked, now vessels from dozens of younger species moved freely through the space lanes. Species that had lived in fear for centuries now traveled under the protection of human patrol fleets. The transformation had been remarkable. The galaxy's predatory species, faced with the choice between changing their ways or facing human justice, had chosen adaptation. The Craven Syndicate, reduced to a fraction of its former strength, now served as reluctant partners in maintaining galactic order. Their warrior culture had been redirected from hunting civilians to protecting trade routes and refugee convoys. Lisa reviewed the daily reports that crossed her desk, each one telling the story of a galaxy learning to function under principles of justice rather than simple dominance. The numbers were encouraging. Piracy was down 70%. Attacks on peaceful colonies had virtually ceased. Refugee assistance programs were helping millions of displaced beings find new homes. Dr. Amy Collins entered the office carrying her own stack of reports. Her role had evolved again, this time to Director of Interspecies Relations, coordinating the complex process of integrating dozens of species into a new galactic order based on cooperation rather than fear. "Status update on the reparations program?" Lisa asked as Amy settled into her chair. "Complete as of yesterday," Amy replied with satisfaction. The Craven delivered the final payment, 50 worlds worth of resources, technology, and monetary compensation. The reconstruction of New Terra and the other destroyed colonies is ahead of schedule. The memorial gardens on Epsilon are particularly beautiful. Lisa nodded, remembering the holographic images of destroyed settlements that had started this entire conflict. Those worlds now hosted thriving communities again, protected by defense networks that incorporated the best of human and alien technology. The children playing in those rebuilt towns would never know the fear their predecessors had lived with. Commander Kelly Foster appeared on the communication screen from her position aboard the UES Retribution, now serving as flagship for the Human Defense Fleet. "Admiral, I have updates on our defensive capabilities. The integration of Zephyrian crystal technology with our quantum drive systems has revolutionized our response times. We can now deploy protective forces to any point in the galaxy within hours instead of weeks." The speed of human response had become legendary throughout the galaxy. When pirates attacked a trade convoy, human ships arrived before the raiders could escape. When natural disasters struck remote worlds, human relief vessels appeared with supplies and medical aid. The galaxy had learned that humanity's reach was both long and swift. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Sector Commander, sent his report from the former Craven territories. Sector 12 is fully integrated into the new system. The former raiding bases have been converted into training facilities for interspecies cooperation programs. Even the Craven seem to be adapting to their new role as protectors rather than predators. The irony was not lost on anyone. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia now worked alongside their former prey to maintain peace. It was perhaps the greatest demonstration of humanity's approach to galactic governance. Rather than destroying their enemies, they had transformed them into allies. Agent Chris Walker materialized from his latest intelligence-gathering mission, his network now spanning the entire galaxy. The Rim species continued to request human protection pacts. Word has spread about what we do to those who threaten peaceful worlds. Most of the former predator species are actively seeking to prove their value as partners, rather than risk becoming targets. The psychological effect of humanity's demonstration of power had been as important as the physical victory. Every species in the galaxy now knew that there were consequences for attacking the innocent. The age of might makes right was over, replaced by an era where justice had teeth. Prime Counselor Zelnath entered the office for his weekly coordination meeting with the human leadership. The water-like being's form had stabilized considerably since the early days of panic following the human offensive. He had adapted to the new reality, with the pragmatism of a leader who wanted his species to survive and prosper. "Ambassador General, Kane," he said with genuine respect in his translated voice. "The Council has completed its review of the latest protection requests. 47 species have formally requested inclusion in the Human Protection Zone. The integration process is proceeding smoothly." Lisa studied the list of requesting species. Many were civilizations that had been prey to the galaxy's predators for centuries. Others were newer species, much like humanity had been, seeking protection as they developed their own capabilities. All of them had learned that human protection came with responsibilities as well as benefits. "Any resistance from the traditionalist factions?" Lisa asked. Selnath's form rippled in what humans had learned was his species' equivalent of a shrug, some grumbling from the older species about the pace of change, but no organized opposition. They remember what happened to those who actively opposed the new order. The Kethtai Empire made the mistake of testing human resolve last month, Lisa remembered that incident. The Kethtai had been a minor power that ruled through intimidation and slavery. When they refused to release their slave populations and continued raiding, humanity had responded with surgical precision. Their military was eliminated in 3 days. Their government was replaced with elected representatives from their former slave species, and their leaders were transported to prison worlds where they could contemplate their crimes. Amy activated the holographic display showing the current state of galactic civilization. Green zones marked areas under human protection, blue zones showed allied species territories, and yellow zones indicated neutral space. Red zones, marking areas controlled by hostile forces, had shrunk to tiny scattered pockets. "The transformation has exceeded our most optimistic projections," Amy reported. "Trade between species is up 400%. Scientific cooperation has resulted in breakthroughs in medicine, agriculture, and space travel. Cultural exchange programs are fostering understanding between species that had never communicated peacefully before." But perhaps the most important change was visible in the council chambers themselves. When debates arose now, they were settled through evidence and discussion rather than threats and intimidation. Younger species had voices that were heard and respected. The ancient practice of might makes right had been replaced by something resembling actual democracy. General Martinez appeared on the communication system from his mobile command center. "Admiral, we've received formal surrender documents from the last of the predator species holdouts. The Vexcar hegemony has agreed to cease all raiding operations and submit to rehabilitation programs." Lisa felt a sense of satisfaction as she realized that the galaxy's transformation was nearly complete. Every major predatory species had either been defeated, transformed, or brought into the new system. The age of terror was ending. "What about monitoring and enforcement?" she asked. "Our sensor networks now cover 98% of inhabited space," Martinez replied. "Any large-scale military movement is detected within minutes. Any attack on civilian populations triggers automatic response protocols. The galaxy has learned that there is nowhere to hide from human justice." As the meeting concluded, Lisa walked back to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights, human colonies thrived without fear. Alien species that had lived in terror for centuries now built peaceful civilizations. Children of dozens of species grew up in a galaxy where strength was used to protect rather than exploit. The Council had ignored Earth's anger when humanity first asked for justice. They had dismissed human lives as unimportant and human concerns as irrelevant. They had believed that their ancient power and traditional dominance would continue forever. They had been wrong about everything. Humanity had not sought conquest or domination. They had sought justice, and when justice was denied, they had taken the power to enforce it themselves. The galaxy was learning that there were worse things than being conquered by humans. They could have been conquered by species that saw power as an end in itself, rather than a means to protect the innocent. Now, as Lisa watched ships from dozens of species moving peacefully through space under the protection of human fleets, she knew that Earth's anger had been transformed into something far more powerful. It had become the galaxy's conscience, backed by the power to make that conscience meaningful. The stars no longer looked down on a galaxy ruled by fear. They looked down on a galaxy learning what justice looked like when it had the power to enforce itself. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos unlike anything seen in the Chamber's 10,000-year history. Ancient species that had ruled the galaxy since before most stars were born now faced a reality that shattered everything. They thought they knew about power and warfare. Prime Counselor Zelnath's translucent form flickered and wavered as he struggled to maintain coherence. The water-like being had existed for over 5,000 years, had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but had never experienced anything like the reports flooding in from across Council space. "The tactical data cannot be accurate," he said, his voice carrying the tremor of someone whose fundamental understanding of reality had been shaken. No species could coordinate simultaneous attacks across 17 star systems. No weapons could penetrate defenses that have stood for millennia. Counselor Vextai's compound eyes moved frantically as he reviewed the incoming reports on his personal display. The insectoid being's mandibles clicked in patterns that indicated extreme agitation. The humans attacked 73 military installations, 36 fortress worlds, and 12 capital cities in the span of 6 hours. The precision and timing suggest capabilities we believed impossible for any species without quantum consciousness networks. The chamber filled with alien voices speaking in dozens of languages as species that had dominated the galaxy for eons tried to comprehend their new reality. The Cravon Syndicate, scourge of the outer systems for 10,000 years, had been reduced to a handful of surviving ships hiding in asteroid fields. The Zephyrian Confederation's crystal cities lay in glittering ruins. The Nebulan Collective had withdrawn all military forces to their core systems. Through it all, one fact remained clear. The humans had done the impossible, and they had done it with technologies that rendered traditional galactic warfare obsolete. The chamber's massive doors opened with a sound like thunder. Admiral Lisa Kane entered flanked by an honor guard of human Marines wearing armor that seemed to bend light around itself. The same woman who had stood before them months ago as a supplicant now walked with the confidence of someone who had proven her species' power beyond any doubt. But there was something else in her bearing, something that made even the most arrogant council members pay attention. Lisa Kane carried herself not like a conqueror seeking to dominate, but like a judge who had come to pass sentence. "Honored Council," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. 3 months ago, Captain Morrison and Dr. Collins stood in this chamber and asked for justice. They presented evidence of attacks on peaceful human colonies. They showed you images of murdered families and destroyed communities. The main display screens around the chamber activated, showing the same images of devastation that Amy Collins had presented during that first diplomatic meeting. Burned settlements, dead children, families torn apart by Cravon raids. The evidence that the council had dismissed as irrelevant. "Your response was to tell us that our people's lives didn't matter," Lisa continued. "You told us that ancient hunting rights were more important than human children. You told us to move our colonies and accept whatever treatment you decided to give us." Counselor Vextai's voice carried a note of desperation as he tried to reassert the old order. "The council operates by laws and traditions that predate your species by thousands of years. The Cravon have legitimate territorial claims." Lisa's expression didn't change as she activated new displays showing the current state of Cravon territory. Where once there had been military bases and raiding fleets, now there were ruins and surrender flags. "The Cravon had those claims, Counselor." Past tense. Dr. Amy Collins stepped forward carrying a datapad that glowed with official seals and diplomatic codes. Her role had evolved from diplomat seeking aid to prosecutor presenting terms. "We return to present updated conditions for galactic peace. The Cravon Syndicate will pay full reparations for the human colonies they destroyed. Compensation for 50,000 murdered civilians, reconstruction costs for 7 destroyed worlds, and punitive damages for the suffering they caused." The number appeared on the main display, and several alien delegates made sounds of shock. The reparations demand was enormous, enough to bankrupt most species. But Amy continued reading from her list. The Zephyrian Confederation will surrender all military crystal technology as compensation for their complicity in providing weapons used against human civilians. The Nebulan Collective will cease all support for predatory species and will establish refugee assistance programs for victims of galactic violence. Prime Counselor Zelnath's form solidified as he attempted to maintain his authority. The Council does not negotiate under threat of force. These demands are unreasonable and will not be considered. General Carlos Martinez appeared on the central communication display from the bridge of his command ship, positioned ominously close to the Council's own homeworlds. Behind him, the bridge crew worked at stations controlling weapons that had just proven capable of destroying anything in the galaxy. Counselor, Martinez said with the calm politeness of someone holding overwhelming force, I don't think you understand the situation. We're not making demands. We're informing you of the new reality. You can accept these terms willingly, or you can discover what happens when humanity stops being reasonable. The threat hung in the chamber's air like a toxic cloud. Species that had ruled through intimidation and dismissal for millennia now confronted a force that had proven superior through innovation, coordination, and the terrible focus that came with righteous anger. Agent Chris Walker materialized from, seemingly nowhere near the speaking platform, his intelligence operatives having infiltrated even the Council's most secure areas. We should mention that human fleets are currently positioned near the homeworlds of every Council species. We know the location of every military base, every government facility, every population center in Council space. The implications were clear. Humanity had not simply won battles. They had demonstrated the ability to strike anywhere in the galaxy with weapons that made traditional defenses meaningless. The balance of power had shifted completely. Counselor Ythiara of the Molten Core Collective, a being of living metal whose species controlled vast mining operations, spoke for the first time. What guarantee do we have that humanity will not use these weapons against us if we comply? Lisa's expression softened slightly, showing the first hint that the humans were not simply another conquering species. The same guarantee we offered when we first asked for your help protecting innocent civilians. Humanity fights to defend the defenseless, not to dominate the galaxy. We want justice, not empire. She gestured to the displays showing human-controlled territory. Look at what we've done with the worlds we've taken. Former Craven slave populations have been freed and given self-governance. Refugee species have been offered protection and assistance. We're not building an empire. We're building a system where peaceful species don't have to fear predators. Amy activated new displays showing human refugee assistance programs, medical aid to war-torn worlds, and reconstruction efforts in formerly oppressed systems. Every world under human protection has seen improvements in living standards, reductions in violence, and increases in interspecies cooperation. The Council chamber fell silent as the assembled delegates absorbed this information. Many had expected humanity to behave like every other species that had gained galactic power, using it to dominate and exploit others. Instead, the humans seemed genuinely committed to protection and justice. But the threat remained clear. Humanity now possessed the power to enforce their vision of justice whether the Council agreed or not. Prime Counselor Zelnath's form wavered as he realized the futility of resistance. And if the Council refuses these terms? Lisa's voice carried the quiet certainty of someone who held absolute power and the wisdom to use it carefully. Then the Council will discover that humanity has been remarkably restrained so far. You've seen what we can do to military targets and predatory species. You don't want to learn what we can do to those who actively oppose justice. The chamber filled with the sound of alien delegates conferring in urgent whispers. The age of council dominance was over. The age of human accountability had begun. The fortress world of Kethmoran had never known fear. For 10,000 years, the Craven Syndicate had used it as their base for hunting expeditions against younger species across the galaxy. Massive defense stations orbited the planet like deadly moons, their weapons pointed outward at empty space that no enemy had ever dared to approach. Warlord Krextor stood on the observation deck of his palace, looking out at the stars with satisfaction. Below him, the planet's surface was covered with military bases, weapon factories and training grounds where young Craven warriors learned to hunt the weak species that populated the galaxy's outer regions. The recent raids on human colonies had been particularly successful, providing both entertainment and valuable resources. The Craven were proud of their reputation as the galaxy's apex predators. They stood 3 meters tall, with thick armor-like skin and natural weapons that could tear through metal. Their culture was built around the hunt, and they saw other species as either prey to be taken or rivals to be destroyed. The Galactic Council had long ago accepted their nature and given them traditional hunting rights across vast areas of space. Krextor was reviewing reports from his raiding fleets when the universe seemed to bend around him. Space above Kethmaran suddenly twisted and folded in ways that violated every known law of physics. Where moments before there had been empty vacuum, 30 massive ships appeared as if reality itself had been torn open. The human dreadnoughts emerged from quantum space mere kilometers above the planet's surface, their dark hulls bristling, with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Admiral Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as her fleet materialized in perfect formation around the Craven homeworld. The element of surprise was complete. Every defense station, every patrol ship, every sensor array on the planet had been caught completely unprepared. All ships, this is Admiral Kane, she broadcast across the human fleet. Remember New Terra. Remember the families on Epsilon Colony. Remember the children they murdered while the Council did nothing. Today we show them what happens when they mistake human restraint for human weakness. The Ragnarok weapons fired as one. 30 streams of weaponized antimatter launched from the human dreadnoughts, each one guided by quantum entanglement, targeting systems that made evasion impossible. The Craven defense stations had shields designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, the same technology the galaxy had used for millennia. They had never faced anything like what humanity had created. The defense stations simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there, massive, structures bristling with weapons and armor. The next moment they were expanding clouds of superheated gas as their matter was converted directly to energy. The explosions lit up Kethmaran's sky like a dozen new suns. Krextor watched from his palace as his impregnable defenses vanished. In seconds, the communication systems screamed with reports from across the planet as military commanders tried to understand what was happening. How could the orbital stations be gone? How could any weapon penetrate shields that had protected Kethmaran for centuries? Impossible, he growled, his voice carrying the deep rumble that marked Craven anger. No species has weapons that can do this. The Council would have warned us. His military advisor, General Thakmor, was frantically working at a communication console. Warlord, we're receiving emergency transmissions from across our territory. Human fleets are attacking our outposts throughout the sector. They're using weapons and tactics we've never seen before. On his tactical display, Krextor watched red icons representing human ships appear throughout Craven space. The humans weren't just attacking Kethmaran. They were simultaneously striking dozens of targets across hundreds of light years. The coordination was perfect, the timing flawless. Captain Ben Sullivan's voice came through the communication system from the UES Vengeance as his ship moved into position above the planet's main military complex. Gravity bombs armed and ready, Admiral. Target locked on the primary fortress. Lisa nodded, her face showing no emotion as she gave the order that would change galactic history. Fire. The gravity bombs were humanity's most terrifying creation. Instead of simply destroying matter, they destroyed the space that matter occupied. When they detonated above Kethmaran's surface, reality itself seemed to collapse inward. Mountains folded in on themselves. Oceans were pulled into impossible spirals. The very ground beneath the Craven fortresses began to tear apart, as gravitational forces beyond anything in nature ripped through the planet's crust. 50 light-years away, Captain Jake Morrison led a different kind of assault on the crystal city of Velshar, homeworld of the Zephyrian Confederation. The Zephyrians had provided the Craven with advanced shield technology in exchange for a share of their hunting spoils. They believed their crystalline cities were protected by energy barriers that could stop any attack. Hull breach successful. reported Lieutenant Sam Parker as human Marines poured through the shattered crystal walls of the city's outer defenses. The Zephyrians had watched in confusion as the humans approached their barriers, then in shock as harmonic resonance weapons turned their impenetrable defenses into glittering dust. Dr. Amy Collins, now serving as a military advisor, explained, over the communication channel as human forces advanced through the crystal corridors. We spent months studying their crystal matrix technology. Every crystal has a resonant frequency, a specific vibration that will cause it to shatter. We found that frequency. The Zephyrian defenders fired their energy weapons at the advancing humans, but the Marines' new armor absorbed the attacks and converted them into power for their own weapon systems. What should have been a devastating defense became fuel for the human assault. Jake led his team toward the city's control center, where Zephyrian leaders were frantically trying to coordinate a response. The aliens looked like living sculptures, made of colored crystal, beautiful and delicate. But Jake remembered the images of human children killed by Cravon weapons powered by Zephyrian technology. "This is for New Terra," he said as his team secured the control room. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human forces struck at targets the Council had believed were untouchable. The Nebulan gas cities found their atmospheric shields, dispersed by sonic weapons that turned their protective atmosphere against them. Ancient fortress worlds that had stood for millennia crumbled under gravitational attacks that folded space itself. Back on Kethmaran, Warlord Krextor watched his empire collapse in real time. The humans had not just defeated his forces. They had demonstrated technologies that made traditional galactic warfare obsolete. His final transmission before the bombardment reached his palace was a single word transmitted to the Galactic Council: impossible. Admiral Lisa Kane watched from her command ship as the Cravon homeworld surface was reshaped by forces beyond nature. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were reduced to twisted metal and broken stone. Military bases that had launched raids against peaceful colonies were now craters filled with molten rock. Commander Kelly Foster reported from the tactical station. "All primary targets neutralized, Admiral. Cravon military capability has been reduced by 97%. Their raiding fleets are surrendering or fleeing the sector." Chris Walker's intelligence network provided updates from across human operational areas. Zephyrian leadership is requesting immediate negotiations. The Nebulan Collective has withdrawn all support from Council military operations. Multiple species are sending diplomatic messages asking for terms. Lisa looked at the tactical display showing the results of Operation Righteous Fury. In less than 6 hours, humanity had achieved what the galaxy believed impossible. They had simultaneously attacked dozens of heavily defended targets across hundreds of light years and emerged victorious from every engagement. But this was not about conquest or empire. This was about justice. "All ships, begin Phase 2 operations," Lisa commanded. "Secure all captured territories and prepare for Council response. Make sure our prisoners are treated properly, and our new territories are protected. We're not here to become the galaxy's new tyrants. We're here to make sure the old ones can never hurt innocent people again." The galaxy had ignored Earth's anger for too long. Now they were learning what happened when humanity finally decided to respond. Admiral Lisa Kane stood in the war room deep inside Earth's Defense Command headquarters. The room was filled with glowing screens and holographic displays that showed the positions of human ships across the galaxy. Officers moved between the displays, checking data and updating reports. The air hummed with quiet energy as humanity's finest military minds worked together with one purpose. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison and Amy Collins returned from the council meeting. 3 months since the galaxy's rulers had made it clear they did not care about human lives. In those 3 months, everything had changed. Lisa looked at the main display showing human space. Red dots marked the colonies that had been attacked. Blue dots showed human military bases. Green dots represented the secret facilities where humanity's best scientists and engineers had been working day and night. The pattern was clear to anyone who knew how to read it. Humanity was preparing for war. "Colonel Peters, give me the status report," Lisa said, her voice calm but carrying the authority of someone who had spent 30 years in space warfare. Colonel Dan Peters stepped forward, his gray hair and lined face showing the experience of countless battles. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion when Lisa was still a young officer. Now he was her most trusted advisor. All reserve fleets have been activated, Admiral. We have called back every ship, every crew, every officer who can hold a weapon or pilot a fighter. The 10th Fleet under Commodore Harris is moving to secure our outer colonies. General Martinez has our ground forces at full combat readiness. Lisa nodded as she studied the numbers. In 3 months, humanity had gone from a peaceful species focused on farming and trade to a military machine ready for galactic war. The transformation was remarkable, but Lisa knew it was also necessary. The Council had given them no choice. Commander Kelly Foster approached with her own data pad. Kelly was young for her rank, but she had proven herself as one of humanity's best strategic planners. Admiral, our Black Site facilities have completed development of the new ship designs. 30 Prometheus-class dreadnoughts are ready for deployment. Each ship is equipped with our new gravity manipulation drives and quantum torpedo arrays. The Prometheus-class ships were humanity's secret weapon. While the Council saw humans as primitive newcomers, human scientists had been studying alien technology and improving it in ways the galaxy's elder species had never imagined. The new ships were faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything currently in space. Lisa walked over to another display showing detailed ship specifications. What about our intelligence gathering? Do we know where the Council keeps their fleets? Agent. Chris Walker stepped out of the shadows near the back of the room. Chris ran humanity's intelligence services, and his people had spent months infiltrating alien space. He was quiet and careful, the kind of man who could disappear in a crowd but who saw everything. Our operatives have been busy, Admiral. The Zephyrians maintain only small defense fleets around their crystal cities. They believe their energy barriers make them impossible to attack. The Nebulans have powerful ships, but they move slowly and take weeks to organize any response. Chris activated another display showing alien military positions. The Kravon Syndicate keeps most of their forces near their homeworld of Kethmaran. They have strong defenses, but they're designed to stop the kind of weapons other aliens use. They've never faced human technology. Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved to the center of the room, her eyes bright with the excitement of a scientist who had just solved an impossible problem. Elena led humanity's weapons development program, and she had been working without sleep for weeks. The Ragnarok weapons are ready for deployment. Council defenses are built to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. They use the same defensive technology they've used for thousands of years. Elena brought up a holographic model of the new weapon system. They've never encountered weaponized antimatter guided by quantum entanglement systems. Our targeting computers can track and hit enemy ships even if they jump to hyperspace. The weapons ignore traditional shields completely. Lisa studied the weapon specifications with satisfaction. While the Council species had grown comfortable with their ancient technologies, humanity had been innovating and adapting. Human weapons. Designers had taken alien concepts and improved them beyond recognition. What about ground forces? Lisa asked. General Carlos Martinez stepped forward, his uniform showing the decorations of someone who had fought on a dozen worlds. All Marine units are equipped with the new powered armor systems. We've combined Kravon strength enhancement technology with Zephyrian energy shielding. Our soldiers can now match alien warriors in personal combat while maintaining human tactical flexibility. Lisa looked around the room at her officers. Each face showed determination mixed with anger. The Council had dismissed humanity as children playing with toys they didn't understand. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Captain Ben Sullivan commanded the new dreadnought fleet from his ship, the UES Retribution. His voice came through the communication system from orbit. Admiral, all dreadnought captains report ready for deployment. Our crews have trained for months in the new combat systems. We know our targets and we know our missions. Lisa walked to the main tactical display and activated the attack plans. Three-dimensional maps showed the locations of key alien military and political targets. Red lines traced attack routes that would take human forces deep into Council space. The plan was ambitious and dangerous, but it was also the only way to make the galaxy listen. "The Council believes we will simply obey their orders," Lisa said, addressing all the officers in the room and the ship captains listening through communications. "They think we're afraid of their ancient power and their threats. They believe we'll move our colonies and accept whatever treatment they decide to give us." She paused, looking at each face in turn. "They're wrong. Humanity doesn't make empty threats, and we don't abandon our people. When diplomacy fails, when justice is denied, when innocent lives are ignored, we respond with force." Amy Collins appeared on one of the communication screens from the diplomatic facility. "Admiral, I've finished reviewing all Council communications from the past year. They're not even discussing our situation anymore. As far as they're concerned, the human problem has been solved by telling us to move." Lisa nodded grimly. "Then, they won't be expecting what comes next." Chris Walker activated his intelligence network displays. "All operatives are in position. When we begin operations, we'll have real-time intelligence on enemy movements and defensive measures. The aliens won't be able to coordinate their response." Dr. Rodriguez brought up the final weapon specifications. "The gravity bombs are loaded and ready. When we hit their fortress worlds, we won't just be attacking their defenses. We'll be attacking the very space around their planets." Lisa took a deep breath and looked at the holographic display showing human space surrounded by the vast territories of the Council species. For centuries, younger species had been forced to accept whatever treatment the galaxy's elders decided to give them. Today, that was going to change. "All units, this is Admiral Kane," she broadcast to every human military facility and ship in the galaxy. "Begin Operation Righteous Fury. Show the Council what happens when they ignore Earth's anger." The war room, filled with acknowledgement signals as human forces across the galaxy received their orders. Within hours, the most powerful military machine in human history would strike at targets the Council believed were impossible to reach. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had teeth. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council building on Centauri Prime. His boots made small sounds on the smooth floor as he moved toward the center of the huge room. The ceiling stretched high above him, and alien voices filled the air like distant thunder. He carried a small datapad in his hands, holding it tight as he looked around at the strange beings that ruled the galaxy. The Council chamber was bigger than any stadium Jake had ever seen on Earth. Thousands of alien creatures sat in curved rows that went up and up until they disappeared in shadows. Some looked like giant insects with clicking sounds coming from their mouths. Others were made of what seemed like living gas that moved and changed shape. There were beings made of crystal that reflected light in rainbow colors. Jake had seen many alien species before, but this many together still made him feel small. "Doctor." Amy Collins walked beside him, her face calm but her eyes showing worry. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 10 years and had dealt with aliens many times. But this was different. This time they were not here to make friends or trade deals. They were here because human people were dying and no one seemed to care. Jake stopped at the speaking area in the center of the room. A small platform rose from the floor, lifting him up so the Council members could see him better. The noise in the chamber got quieter as more aliens noticed the humans. Some turned their strange heads to look. Others kept talking as if nothing had happened. Counselor Vextai was the first to speak. He was one of the insect-like beings, tall as two humans standing on top of each other. His voice came through the translation device as a series of clicks and buzzes that turned into words. "Human Morrison, you stand before the Galactic Council. State your business quickly. We have important matters to discuss today." Jake looked down at his datapad, then back up at the sea of alien faces. "Honored Council members, I come here for the third time this year to talk about attacks on human colonies. The Cravon Syndicate has destroyed 7 of our settlements. They killed over 50,000 innocent people, including children and families who never hurt anyone. The chamber filled with various alien sounds that the translation devices turned into murmurs and whispers. Some aliens made clicking noises. Others created sounds like wind blowing through caves. Jake could tell that most of them were not interested in what he was saying. Prime Counselor Zelnath floated near the center of the upper area. His body looked like it was made of clear water that moved and shifted constantly. When he spoke, his voice sounded like waves on a beach. Human Morrison, your species has existed in our galaxy for only 200 years. The Cravon have ancient rights to those star systems. Their claims go back thousands of years before your people even knew there were other worlds. Dr. Amy Collins stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the speaking platform. The pictures showed burned buildings, destroyed farms, and the remains of human settlements. Families running from explosions, children crying over their parents. The evidence was clear and terrible. These were peaceful farming worlds, Amy said, her voice strong and clear. We followed all the rules for starting new colonies. We checked with the council database. No one claimed those systems. We built homes and schools and hospitals. We grew food and raised our children there. Then the Craven came and killed everyone. Some of the alien council members looked at the images for a moment. Others continued their private conversations. A few even seemed to be sleeping. Jake felt anger growing in his chest as he watched them ignore the proof of murder and destruction. Counselor Vextai clicked his mandibles together, and what Jake had learned was their version of a laugh. Human Morrison, your species must learn that the galaxy operates by rules much older than your civilization. The Cravon Syndicate has traditional hunting rights in those areas. If humans choose to place their settlements in hunting grounds, they accept the risks. Jake's hands tightened into fists. Hunting rights? You call the murder of 50,000 people hunting? The Cravon view younger species as prey animals, said another council member, this one looking like a walking tree with blue bark. This is their nature. It has been accepted for millennia. Your people should have researched local customs before settling. Amy stepped closer to the platform. We demand justice. We demand compensation for the families who lost everything. We demand protection for our remaining colonies. The chamber filled with what sounded like alien laughter. Different species made different sounds, but Jake could tell they all meant the same thing. They thought the human demands were funny. Prime. Counselor Zelnath raised one of his watery appendages for silence. The matter is closed, humans. Your species will move its colonies away from the disputed areas. Find empty systems farther from Cravon territory. This is the council's final decision. Jake felt his face getting hot with anger. And what if we refuse to move? What if we stay and defend our homes? Counselor Vextai's compound eyes focused on Jake like a predator looking at prey. Then your species will learn why younger civilizations show proper respect to their elders. The council has ways of teaching lessons to those who do not listen. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Jake looked around the chamber at thousands of alien faces. Most showed boredom or mild amusement. A few showed what might have been pity. None showed any sign of caring about human lives or human rights. Amy touched Jake's arm gently. We understand the council's position, she said in a diplomatic voice. We will take your words back to Earth and discuss them with our leaders. As they walked out of the chamber, Jake heard alien voices starting up their conversations again. The humans and their problems were already forgotten. At the door, Jake turned back for one last look at the council. They had treated Earth like a small child asking for candy. They had dismissed human lives as if they meant nothing. They think we're just another weak species that will do whatever they say. Jake said quietly to Amy as they left the building. Amy nodded, her face showing the same anger Jake felt. They have no idea what humans are capable of when we're pushed too far. They're about to find out that we're not the helpless children they think we are. Jake looked up at the alien sky filled with strange stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were under threat and human families lived in fear. The council had made it clear they would not help. They had made it clear they did not care. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake would be thinking that humans would simply accept it.